What's a secret from your field of work the general public probably doesn't know? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started. Story 1. If you're going to college, apply for all the college scholarships. Even if you don't qualify, sometimes you'll be the only one who applied and you'll get it due to that. Answer. In high school, I applied to about 30 scholarships and I was top 5 in my class of 400 and got absolutely none of them. It was so weird because I got into the best school in my state and did so well in school as a first-gen college student with immigrant parents who struggled to get by at times. And I asked all of my teachers to write so many recommendation letters for these. So heartbreaking and a waste of time, lol. Story 2. Editor here. Every time you see a bald eagle in a film or commercial and hear its noble screea echo off the mountains, it's not a bald eagle cry, it's a red-tailed hawk. Bald eagles sound like teenage seagulls with allergies. It's just not what audiences want to hear. Story 3. Choosing DNR, do not resuscitate, and later comfort care when at the end stages of a disease is far better than full code and doing everything. Answer. This should be the top post. Most of the population is not educated about what doing everything actually means, and in my opinion, is one of the worst problems in healthcare. The number of times I have put my patients through absolute hell because their family was not coming to terms with the reality of the situation broke my heart and is one of the major reasons I left nursing. All people deserve passing with dignity and maximum comfort. In an age of advanced technology and medicine, it's so hard to watch that get sacrificed, especially when the patient cannot advocate for themselves. Story 4. If you are in North America, you probably don't have rabies in your area, not because it naturally dies off, but because people have been working tirelessly to keep it at bay by dropping millions of vaccine baits and vaccinating thousands and thousands of raccoons by hand. If you ignore it, it will spread. Story 5. In blood bank. It's not just A, B, O, and RHD blood types. There are dozens of other blood group systems, currently 47, recognized by International Society of Blood Transfusion, that we check when doing transfusions. And each system contains multiple antigens that have to be analyzed and cross-matched in order to transfuse blood. Story 6. A lot researchers see journals as a necessary evil. You have to pay to publish, then pay again to access the article you wrote. Then to top it all off, journals expect you to review papers for free. So, if you can't get access to a journal article, most researchers would happily email you a copy of an article they wrote if you just ask them. Edit spelling. Story 7. You need a court order to change a court order. I know it doesn't seem like a secret, but verbally agreeing to something other than the terms of the order later doesn't count. Answer. Ugh. I served on a jury when I was like 19. Part of the case involved parents being granted a restraining order against their adult son. But then later they invited him to their house, which the cops found out about. So they came in and busted the son, who was in the basement, in a locked room, in a closet. But he wasn't hiding, he was taking a nap. When the parents were questioned about the restraining order that they requested, they testified that they went in to the clerk office or wherever and let them know they wanted to get rid of the restraining order. So that was that. The whole thing was pretty sad and frustrating. Story 8. The majority of 911 calls are not emergencies. People call for amazingly stupid reasons. What time is it? You better get salt and gravel on that icy road. My taxes pay your salary. And the calls demanding an officer be sent out for minor neighborhood disputes? Constant. Answer. In addition, a lot of people die in the night and get found in the morning. I dislike the 7 a.m. shift for this reason. My third day on the job, I walked in to hear a 30-year vet, about to retire, was trying to calm down a mother who had just found her 19-year-old son dead from tragic end. The dispatcher remained calm, stayed on the line with her until EMS arrived, then calmly put his headset down and wrote out the next 3 months in the break room. That last call finished him. Story 9. The cloud isn't some mystical realm. It's just other people's computers in other people's data centers that you rent space on. Story 10. When we are working on a movie or a TV show that is bad, we know it. You always know when you're shooting something bad. It's hard to tell when something will be good or even great, but when it's bad, it's as obvious as you think it would be. which means there's a little bit of sympathy for all of you that will have to pay to watch it later, because we at least got paid while having to suffer through making it. You have to pay to watch it. Apologies in advance and afterward. It's not like we can stand up and tell the director and/or producer to stop and spend this money on something better. Answer: I worked with a special effects guy once who had worked on huge productions for decades. We were on a simple commercial shoot. I asked how quick he knew a production would turn into a pile of garbage. He said it was always obvious the first week. Amazing considering how long some productions go. The whole time everyone is just gritting their teeth and thinking about paying their mortgage and buying their kids' shoes. Story 11. Many PhD scientists are both the smartest and dumbest people you'll ever meet, can spend their life researching the inner workings of life, but can't troubleshoot themselves out of a wet paper bag. Answer: there are 3 types of PhD students I've met. Genuinely brilliant people who are generally intelligent, emergent thinkers who will change their field, and also knew a bit about everything. Average students who work hard, understand their research area well, but are as dumb as anyone else about any other given thing. Foreign student Nepo babies getting a free ride from their government because their parents are influential back home. All can be lovely people, and I don't mean to imply any of them don't deserve it, but only a small fraction fit the genuinely brilliant stereotype. Story 12. Have you ever got pissed on a web page or mobile app when something isn't working and clicked a bunch of times in a row? This is called a rage tap, and while it won't fix your issue, most apps' websites have analytics systems that detect this and will report it, which helps developers discover that there is something wrong with that page. Story 13. The government uses third-grade standardized test scores to predict the approximate prison population in 10 years. Story 14. Elder care. There's no magical safety net that's there to take care of you. From insurance's perspective, you have your whole life to plan this out. It's not up to them to save you. Either you have the money to find help facility placement, or you don't. If you don't, kiss the inheritance money to your kids goodbye, because you'll need to spend down to qualify for Medicaid. If you don't want to do that, then you better have some family or friends willing to take over care at home. Many facilities will run a financial background check on you before they accept you for admission. If you don't have enough money to last through the end of your life, many facilities will tell you aren't a good fit. You get what you pay for with facilities, and Medicaid accepting ones can be rough. Anticipate sharing a room with someone else. Even if you do have money, nursing homes are falling apart these days, and I'd still expect a subpar experience. Elder care really needs to be a bigger issue in this country because it sucks right now. Answer: many facilities will run a financial background check on you before they accept you for admission. If you don't have enough money to last through the end of your life, many facilities will tell you aren't a good fit. A relative went into one of these facilities when his wife passed, and he really couldn't be on his own anymore. So he sold his house and rolled those funds to pay for the assisted living facility. When he was filling out all the forms, paperwork, etc., the person he was working with flat out said, "We do not accept Medicaid. When you are no longer self-pay, you will need to leave. I highly recommend you get your name on a waiting list now for a Medicaid facility, as the waits are years long for decent ones." She pulled no punches, and honestly, we all appreciated it because he knew where he stood and could plan accordingly. It ended up that his money outlived him, so it all worked out in the end. But elder care is no joke. People think there are far more safety nets than there are, and have zero idea how it all actually works, because if they did, they'd prep for it far in advance of actually needing it. Story 15. Most companies' IT infrastructure is basically held together with spit and duct tape. Someone farts wrong and half the place goes down. Answer: yup. And some guy named Steve, who has worked there for 15 years, has the only copy of the admin credentials scribbled on a sticky note in his office. He's the only guy who really knows how all these makeshift systems are cobbled together to be barely functional. If Steve were to leave tomorrow, the whole company would be fudge, and it would take weeks to figure out the most basic issues. Story 16. You don't need to tell the life insurance company about that one line of coke you did 6 years ago. Just shh. Answer: I saw someone say the same about smoking. Insurance companies often draw no distinction between "had one cigar at my brother's wedding 15 years ago" and "have smoked 4 packs a day for 40 years. That's just smoker, yes, to them. So if you're a non-smoker by any sane person's definition, the advice is basically just lie and don't be an idiot about posting the photo on social media. Story 17. Working with animals is 80. Cleaning up poop, pee, and other bodily fluids. Everybody thinks you just feed them and cuddle them all day. Answer: ER vet assistant here. I started my shift this morning with a DOA who had been disemboweled. I'm talking half of his intestines were out, and he had completely bled out in the car. Gums paper white. I got chewed out by the owner as I brought the dog inside because I said I couldn't do CPR in the parking lot. Not that it would have helped anyway. 2 hours later, I got bit twice by a cat who hasn't had a rabies vaccine in years, because why would the owner keep his cat up to date? I'm currently waiting at the ER to treat the cat's bite. Sometimes I dislike this fudge job. Story 18. I work in IT. We're just Googling your problem to figure out how to fix it. We're professional, high-paid Googlers. Story 19. In hotels, floor cleaners can use dirty floor rags occasionally to clean a shower cabin, lampstand, or faucet. Giving the fake impression of a clean room is of way bigger importance than actually cleaning it. Story 20. Librarian archivist. Sometimes we do throw away books. It's called weeding, and we do it to make room for more. Why keep 4 copies of a 2004 James Patterson novel no one's checked out in the last 5 years when you could fit 4 brand new books in their place? Answer: I used to work at a library. Some people really were shocked that we would ever throw out a book. My library tip: they might waive your fines if you are nice. They won't waive your fines if you are not nice. Specific to the branch I worked at, people at the circulation desk dislike people and will not waive your fines. The people at the teen desk are having fun all day and are also empowered to waive fines and are more likely to do so if you ask nicely. Story 21. Your hairstylist probably doesn't remember the names of your pets or kids or spouse, or where you work, or where you went for vacation. When you tell us, we put it into your client file, and before you come in for your next appointment, we review the file to refresh our memories. Think about it. Most of us do about 5 to 10 clients a day, or 25 to 50 clients a week. So if it's been 8 weeks since your last appointment, we've probably seen about 200 to 400 other clients in the meantime. To be honest, if not for your client file, we might not even remember you at all. Answer: this is also done in medicine. I work with some primary care physicians who have digital sticky notes with details of the patient's personal lives. Sometimes they even put it in their official clinic notes. I work sometimes in urgent care, and I once had a patient get offended because I didn't remember her from a visit from last week. Lady, I've seen like 100 patients since you were last here, and it was the first time I met you. She wasn't even there as a patient herself the second time. She was there with her relative who was the actual patient. Story 22. Those silver fillings are going to crack your teeth in half. Dentist who has made fixing the previous generation's mess. In their defense, it was the best option at the time, and they didn't know. Answer: I'm 10K in and still have 3 more teeth that need to be crowned with porcelain because of the amount of amalgam in my mouth. I had a root canal, and that's the day I learned the necessary root canal the Navy gave me was very much not necessary. Turns out you know when a root canal is needed. In other news, my childhood dentist was arrested in my early 20s for Medicare fraud. Apparently, he was performing unnecessary procedures with cheaper materials like amalgam, or saying a crown but doing massive amalgam filling, but charging Medicare for porcelain. I'm sure it's not related at all. Story 23. Former field. A lot of little local police departments are corrupt, not because of movie-style crime, but just by virtue of everyone growing up together. Also, if I was takedown, I'd rather have DAS investigators parked on it than town cops, deputies, or the state boys. Story 24. Financial advisor here. Not a real secret, but the amount of debt the average person is carrying around is insane. Answer: I travel a lot with my husband for business. He has a lot of business in Southern Cal, so since work pays for it, we stay at the Disneyland Hotel a lot, so I can go hang out while he works. Yes, I'm blessed. Disneyland is always packed. Stores are packed. Hotels get sold out often. This is at any time, any day of the year. How are these people paying for this? Disneyland is crazy expensive. Not only tickets, but food merchandise are ridiculously expensive. How are they paying for this? Well, just a few weeks ago, when a young girl, I'm talking like 8 or 9 years old, said, "Please get it for me. Just put it on your credit card." Mom replied, "I can't. All our credit cards are maxed out." And I ask myself, why are you here then? But I'm sure she's not the only one there using credit to be there. Story 25. If you understand how air freight works, and have the correct forms, you can still get almost anything on an airplane through the cargo side. Story 26. Members of Congress and senators are all friends and only scream at each other for the cameras. They're laughing at all of us as suckers. Answer. I have been in science and teaching my whole life, except one portion where I worked in government. The person I work for did nothing specific for their constituents. The only thing they can do is toe the party line. They do not serve the people that elect them. It is so idiotic, it absolutely eliminates any interest in ever working, even tangentially, in politics. It eliminates any faith I had in how the average person can affect change in the government. Story 27. Kittens under 8 weeks old are by far the most likely to die of any group of animals in shelters. 58 of cat deaths in shelters this year have been under 8 weeks. The best way to help change this is by fostering kittens and by ensuring your cats and any cats you see outside are sterilized. Story 28. Truck driver here. Yes, we're aware you want ahead of us. It sucks being behind a truck. When we put on our blinker or slow down, it's for a very good reason. Also, when you pass us, put the pedal to the metal. Our tires are filled to 100 psi, and they can and will blow. When they do it, we'll fudge up your vehicle and possibly your windows. Also, if you can't see our mirrors, we can't see you. Also, we weigh 80,000 pounds. We weight 40 times what? You don't brake check us. Use common sense. Thank you. Story 29. Regardless of whether you buy 50 kilometers or 5 kilometers of armored submarine high-voltage cable, which costs around 1,000 per meter, you get 10 to 20 meters more than you paid for free. Story 30. Teacher here. Many parents of middle school children seem unaware that their child does, in fact, act up in class in the way we say they do, and they're not angels. Story 31. If you're sued, your homeowner's renter's insurance may provide you with a defense. Also, in many civil cases, an insurance company will be the party paying some or all of any judgment for the plaintiff, and the jurors are not allowed to know this because it may influence their judgment when deciding damages. Answer. As an add-on, if you're sued and you don't have insurance, your other assets can be attached as collateral in case you're found liable. In short, if there isn't an insurer to take over the case on your behalf, the payment for the judgment could result in your home being taken instead and/or wage garnishment. Highly recommend homeowners and car insurance always. Story 32. Teachers have very little decision-making in the content they teach, if any. We have to follow the curriculum, and it's a lot to get through. Story 33. That urgent email you just sent, I saw it immediately. I'm just waiting the socially acceptable 23 minutes to reply so it doesn't look like I'm just sitting here staring at my inbox, which I absolutely am. Story 34. Coffee. Be wary of blends. Coffee bags aren't printed with the ratio. With most blends, you are only paying for the name as the recipe is usually one quality and the rest is filler. I used to be a roast master for a large coffee company and had access to recipe percentages. Story 35. Phosphate mines will be empty around year 2100 at constant rate of extraction. Our present industrial agriculture, beyond petrol, is using phosphate to fertilize the fields. It will be absolutely impossible to keep doing this if there is no more phosphate to be used. And phosphate isn't something you can synthesize, let alone create ex nihilo. To put it another way, industrial agriculture based on inputs will be completely impossible and will disappear. Mycorrhizal fungi are the organisms capable of accessing soil phosphate when it's in a form that plants cannot assimilate. It always happens at one point or another. They provide phosphate and other nutrients to the plants in exchange of sugar, as they are unable to do photosynthesis themselves. An agriculture with soils rich in mycorrhizal fungi will be our only option by 2100. This supposes an undisturbed or very seldomly disturbed soil, meaning no-till farming, agroforestry, syntropic agroforestry, and so on. B. The implementation of practices such as regenerative hydrology and agroforestry, including syntropic, is capable of revitalizing any ecosystem on the planet, provided that a plant can grow there. The future will be based on truly renewable resources, such as plants and biomass, photosynthesis, solar thermal energy, deep geothermal energy, etc. Or there will be no future. Story 36. How many major corporations are running mission-critical activities on outdated and/or unsupported systems? The cost to re-platform or upgrade is cost-prohibitive, and some that do try end up paying billions and may not gain a good result. Aviation and banks are terrible examples of this. You also have the typical procurement fairy, where they could give you a genuinely awesome experience and run more cost-effectively, but any project becomes sliced down until it's not worth doing anymore. Story 37. Former agency recruiter here. Yes, I dislike myself. The sheer amount of fake job ads you'll see flooding Seek Indeed LinkedIn is just ridiculous. Story 38. Generally, accountants are not good at maths. They are just okay at it. At best, most accountants can add and subtracts, and even then, plenty fudge that up. It's pretty rare in accounting to use more than the most basic math equations. The only complex math used would be the Black-Scholes equation when valuing derivatives and doing hedge accounting. There might be a lot of volume in calculations when we're tits deep in a spreadsheet, but it still isn't going to be hyper-complex and difficult maths. Answer: this. I'm not good at math. I'm very good at getting Excel to organize the math for me. Very different. My work is more data management than anything. How do we get revenue inventory in System A to transfer correctly into System B, fast and accurately enough to not skew weekly financial models in System C? How do you translate any of it to a manager with a 5th grade reading level while also keeping auditors happy? And more importantly, how do you automate enough of it to where you can start playing Doom in Excel while your macros do the work for you? Story 39. When you write or call your representatives, a staffer is just putting it into a system, and the representative rarely ever lays eyes on it. Story 40. Veterinary related. Getting an opinion from a specialist is probably the best use of your money. Sure, it's expensive up front, but it has the most value. It might be the worst day of your life that your pet is being euthanized. We're sad too, but we're also happy to relieve their suffering. If you're very nice to the staff, some techs will throw in a free nail trim. If you're mean to the staff, word gets around. Many people work at several places, and the veterinary community is very small. Choosing DNR for your pet doesn't mean we do nothing and watch them die. We keep them as comfortable as we can until they pass. Choosing CPR for a 20-year-old dog with heart disease and kidney disease and a million other problems is probably causing more harm than good. You can always switch codes too. Not a secret, but buy good pet insurance or have money set aside. Costs are rising due to greedy corporations taking over like Mars. The whole field is kind of in a fudge-up situation. I promise it's not because individual vets are greedy. Also not a secret, vets don't get kickbacks from recommending you prescription foods. Story 41. Linguistics is kind of the bastard child of the sciences, mainly because we don't even know what it is. We literally cannot define what a word is, or what a language is, or how to define pronouns. It all lives within a gray area. Answer: linguistics is too close to human nature to be purely scientific, simply because human nature is a big part of linguistics. Sure, history, anatomy, neuroscience, etc. are all a part of linguistics. So is stuff like culture, sociology, personal history, and an individual's own personality are also a big part of linguistics. Like, it's probably impossible to scientifically define languages and how we use them, because literally every individual uses language differently, idiolect. But that's actually why I love linguistics. Every time we find a universal in linguistics, it seems like we find an example that defies the universal. My personal favorite, baby talk in quiche. Story 42. City and county medical examiners' offices and morgues deal with all causes of passing unless the person was under the direct care of a doctor. They are not limited to crime and police cases. Also, please, please, please don't let your baby sleep in bed with you. I know parents are exhausted, but please put your baby in their own bed, please. Answer: I work at the local prosecutor's office. My desk, or those of my colleagues, is where police files become court files. At least where I am, Germany, criminal police have to be involved in all cases of passing not under the care of a doctor, and often even then. Grandma fell and diseases in the hospital. Uncle had a heart attack in his sleep at home. Work accident, natural causes, all common causes of passing that still cross my desk as police files. Story 43. Your typical vape has 10x the amount of nicotine per puff than a cigarette. This depends on the cigarette, obviously. And this is info you can look up, but most people just get a vape and think 5 is a low number. It's not. It's a lot of nicotine. LOL, if you're gonna vape, look for brands such as Mr. Vapor that had adjustable nicotine content and set it to low. You're much better off that way. Less nicotine to be addicted to, and it's a little better on your lungs than inhaling smoke from a typical cigarette. It's the fine line. Answer: honestly, just don't vape or smoke. That's coming from someone who used to smoke 3 packs a day. So I know it's hard to quit, but vaping is not good either. I ran a vape store about 10 years ago, and we thought it was perfectly fine back then. In 10 years, we have found out that vaping can be extremely harmful. I can't imagine what the info will tell us in another 20. Story 44. I am trying to repair instrument panels that are older than I am. They do not make this stuff anymore, or the parts for it. When I give you a new unit or replace a part, the new parts are just as old as the first old ones. Also, there's probably a scratch somewhere you can't see that I couldn't get out and just didn't bother because they do not make these anymore. Answer: knew a guy that convinced the place he worked to let him haul off a bunch of old machine cabinets, saved them from having to pay to scrap them so they didn't care. Guy would rip everything out, clean it, and toss it up online. No warranty other than was working when I took it out. According to him, if you have the patience, there's good money to make because someone, somewhere, needs that part that's been discontinued since 1984. So they'll toss a couple hundred at your used part as a Hail Mary. I worked at a place in 2020 that still used a machine built in 1955. Longevity of new machines is kneecapped by the electronics in them. You can buy something brand new with components in it that those manufacturers have already discontinued making, and there's almost never a one-to-one replacement or upgrade. Story 45. Your health insurance that says you get 30, 40, 60 visits or whatever for physical therapy covered per year doesn't actually mean you will get 30, 40, 60 visits or whatever for physical therapy covered. Even if the doctor treating you thinks you need a certain amount of visits, it's usually going to be reviewed by a board of doctors that work for the insurance company, who have never met you, who will review your doctor's request for you to get X number of visits for physical therapy. They'll read the file notes from your doctor about why they think you need it, and the insurance board of doctors will decide if your doctor is right or not. For example, your doctor feels that you need to have 24 visits of physical therapy. Your visit limit for physical therapy is 30 visits covered per calendar year. So no problem, right? Your doctor will have files, forms, and documents explaining why you need these 24 visits. The insurance board of doctors reviews these forms and decides, nah, he definitely only needs 12 visits. 12 visits approved, 12 visits denied by. So you only get 12 visits covered, despite the fact that the doctor actually treating you thinks you need more than that, despite the fact that you don't feel better, stronger after 12 visits. Appeals are possible, but they're a pain in the jerk and take forever to go through. I don't work in appeals, so I can't even say how successful they really are, but I know they're a huge, annoying process. Answer: appeals are definitely annoying. As a former employee of a large common health insurance company and a patient insured by them, please do appeal. They'll deny it just because most people don't appeal and don't understand their insurance. They denied a CT scan payment because it wasn't pre-authorized. It is their policy not to pre-auth CTs. Says so right in their policy. I copied the policy, wrote a statement, and sent it. Paid. I've appealed every denial, and so far, they've all been paid. No guarantees, but it can't hurt. Story 46. Public libraries aren't technically free. They come from taxes, of course. If you come from out of town, you probably can't borrow a book without paying for a membership. Some states have statewide cards, and we hear about it all the time. Do not tell a library worker about how things are different where you live. It changes nothing, and it's not their fault that you still have to pay for a card. Answer: I was on a vacation once while enrolled in university when my laptop suddenly died. I had a test I had planned to take in my Airbnb that I suddenly couldn't do. I ran to the local library where I was and explained the situation. They were so kind and got me set up with a library card and some extra time over what is typically allowed on their public computers, so I could finish the test with time to spare if I needed it. I have never been more grateful for public libraries. I sent the library a donation when I got home. Story 47. For the most part, crew working conditions in the maritime industry are very poor. Seafarers work hail from many developing countries, particularly the Philippines or India, which is leveraged to underpay and overwork them. Their working hours are way too long. Their salary far too low, particularly having been exploited by recruitment agencies who charge them fees to be hired. A curious example is also crew abandonment, where a ship owner finds that it costs them less money, for whatever the underlying reason is, to just walk away from a vessel with its crew effectively stranded for months, if not years. They're unpaid and unable to disembark. I know of one instance where the crew is stuck on board the ship, which is under arrest in West Africa, getting on for 2 years now. Thieves come on board beating the crew up and stealing equipment. Of the course, the local authorities don't do anything because they're in on it. Story 48. Not sure this is a secret, but I am an accountant, and almost everybody I tell always says, "Oh, you must be good at math or really like numbers." The truth is, accounting has very little to do with math, and more to do with just knowing rules and how to use Excel. Story 49. As a software developer, 90% of the job is just Googling the exact error message you're seeing and copy-pasting the answer from a forum thread from 2009 written by a user named DragonSlayer42, who was never heard from again. Story 50. All of the automotive collision repair shops are basically scams built on top of truth. The only reason you don't realize it is because most of the time insurance pays for the cost. But never come a day where you have to pay cash you will understand if you really dig into it. Story 51. Almost no kid that I have taught has failed. That's not because they didn't receive failing grades. It's BC districts at this point pass them along. The amount of work it takes for a kid to pass now is miserably low, lower than any time in my life. Story 52. When calling support, let me research that for a moment, means we're quickly searching our knowledge base for the answer because we have no clue. It'll just be a few more moments. We've given up on the knowledge base and now we're Googling and desperately asking teammates what the hell this error is. Finally, when's a good time to call you back means we have no fudge clue. And now we're trying to find that one guy who has been with the company 50 years and wrote the code for the weird issue you're having. Story 53. Medical devices are manufactured by a crazy hodgepodge of the lowest, fastest bidders. Contract manufacturers put their engineers and operators under crazy pressure to deliver product under budget and under schedule, resulting error tolerance pushing right to the razor's edge. Story 54. In your teens, most people can hear at 5 decibels. By the time you're 30, most are hearing at 15 to 20 on average. Take care of them. Story 55. College professors are unable to brainwash students. If we could, we would make them read the syllabus. Story 56. From my 3 careers, in the military, about 95 of women are intimacy harassed. Working with the homeless, you can't always tell if someone is mentally ill or homeless by looking at them. Many homeless have regular jobs and control over their mental illness. Working for the subways, there's at least one person getting striked by the train weekly. Most of it is people not paying attention, and they get themselves into trouble. Story 57. Doctors are humans too. We make mistakes. We don't know everything, but we still probably know a lot. We can be lazy sometimes. We want to go home and see our families, or just relax. We are not on 247. Just because we are on call doesn't mean we are just sitting around waiting for your question. We have no control over what your insurance will cover. A lot of times we have no control over our schedules. We don't like running behind in clinic or making you wait. It's not because we are just shooting the chute. We were probably dealing with a serious situation, or a PT showed up late, and we are required to still see them. Story 58. 15 years of working in customer service. Even when you're on hold, they might still hear you. Maybe not the rep you're speaking to, but a lot of calls are recorded. You're probably on the recording. Story 59. Intimacy work is more admin computer work than intimacy. That wasn't always the case, but it is now. Stereotypes are largely baseless. We pay taxes. We don't want to steal your husband. We aren't all on substances. Hell, a lot of us are teetotalers. We don't have daddy issues. You could pass most of us in public and never know what we are. The guys aren't cartoon villains rubbing their hands together. They're your doctor, preacher, deacon, child's principal. We see all walks of life for various reasons. We don't all agree with these 304 influencers trying to lure young women into the industry for their own profit. I'm actually trying to start a project against this. It's reprehensible and disgusting. We see some wild shoot. Story 60. The AUCDU system is broken. Your child is not learning. The majority of teachers do not care. and administration certainly do not.
Story 61. When we tell you we need vector artwork, that doesn't mean you can put the same JPEG you already sent us into a PDF and send it back. Story 62. Literally all used cooking oil, UCO, is now used to make renewable diesel and biodiesel. It used to be a waste, landfilled. Now there is a market for it, so it's collected and sold and further processed. Renewable, low carbon, domestic fuel for existing engines. Very exciting. Story 63. Most customer service employees are constantly disrespected and unappreciated. Throwing a temper tantrum may get you what you want, but being nice and patient is likely to get you more in the short and long term. Being decent is copper, being nice is silver, but being kind and sympathetic is solid gold. This shouldn't have to be a life hack or cheat code, but in a world that seems increasingly unkind, kindness is an increasingly precious commodity. Plus, it's just nice to be nice. Story 64. There are many people in the world who are operating at a level of psychosis that is just below the point where we are able to hospitalize them against their will, and they are probably those you least expect. Play it safe when driving and interacting with strangers. Story 65. People used to think auto mechanics took advantage of women. Men are easier to rip off most times because when you sound convincing and technical, men don't want to look ignorant. Women ask questions and want to understand why something is not working. Men just say, "Yeah, I thought that might be it." Story 66. Service industry and retail workers are real people. They have the job to earn money to pay bills and all the other things you do with your money. They do not have the job to deal with your temper tantrums. Knock it off. And service industry workers are definitely not becoming millionaires off of tips, so miss me with that bullshit. Story 67. Putting fragile on packages makes absolutely zero difference. If it's very fragile, use bubble wrap, newspaper, etc., because that word on the outside means nothing. Story 68. 1. Don't push for a management job unless you want to spend your days as a messenger. HR is going to tell you what performance review ranking to give, and who gets promoted or gets a raise and who doesn't. And it's all based on senior management's perception of the employees. And speaking of them, 2. Senior management is not a C-suite filled of the most talented and experienced visionaries in the company. In fact, most of them have little clue on how to do the actual work of the departments that they manage. Senior management got their jobs because they're good at the politics of the organization. That's it. That's corporate management in 2 points. Story 69. I'm a pre-press operator. I optimize artwork for million print jobs. No matter who the customer is or their experience level, roughly 95% files I receive are wrong and have to be corrected. It's crazy that in 2025, people just don't know how to set up print files anymore. Story 70. You know that pack of chicken you ditched on the shampoo shelf? Or the ice cream you left melting behind the pillows? Yeah, we can't put that back. It's done. Gone. Straight to the trash. But the company can afford it, you say. Sure, and they do, by raising prices and cutting hours. So technically, you pay for it. We all do. Every brisket abandoned at checkout and every yogurt left to die in aisle H23 ends up on your next receipt. It's wild how people think corporations can eat the loss, when in reality, it's your grocery bill getting the stomachache. So next time you change your mind, please just fudge hand it to an employee. Don't tuck it behind the cereal like it's going into hiding. Well, put it back before it spoils. Save the planet. Save your wallet. Save us from finding raw meat in home goods. Story 71. Termite WDO inspections are not foolproof. The form we fill out mostly says there's no obvious and visible damage from what I can see. A good pest tech will be thorough, but we can't see through walls. Story 72. If you work for a big company, it gets sued and investigated a lot. Doesn't matter which one. It just does. During discovery, they receive subpoenas requesting documents. Email, chat, share drives, cloud drives are all collected on the back end, and you would have no idea. If you have any decision-making power, or are, at all, involved in groups that do, someone has read your work emails and chats. This includes things as small as coming up with prices or making small engineering decisions. Your email and chats are probably sitting on, at least, 6 different servers at various discovery vendors, law firms, and government agencies. Story 73. At some point, all software is just sticky taped together, except maybe embedded stuff, but those people are something else. Story 74. Big tech companies, and probably smaller ones as well, have built their cultures around producing new and shiny features, which deprioritizes reliability. The reason we don't have more crippling internet outages is due to unsung and unpromoted people who are holding things together with their blood, sweat, and tears before they burn out. With the way the industry is going, I suspect we're heading for a cliff where those people will exit and won't be replaced. Story 75. If you are using a solicitor for something and you're not happy with the service you're getting, e.g., slow communication, being passed around, think you're being overcharged, email or write to them asking for a copy of their complaints procedure. 9 times out of 10, you will suddenly become their most important client. Story 76. Good CPS workers dislike CPS way more than you do. It's an incredibly broken system, and we are desperate for a greater emphasis on children's rights so we can remove children who need it. We've all been forced to leave a child in a dangerous situation after the child has disclosed abuse. We know that child's life is about to get so much worse. I sobbed until 3 a.m. after my last failed removal. That child is still being abused, but the courts would not allow us to intervene without more evidence than that child's disclosures. We're also major advocates for better social safety nets. I wish we could social safety net me out of a job. That's my dream. But capitalism and child abusers are evil, abundant, and constant. Story 77. Not all medical facilities take HIPAA as seriously as they're supposed to. Be cautious about what you say. I've heard one specific hospital in my city violate it so much. Also, in mental health programs, it will occur occasionally where people who need a higher level of care are accepted anyway because they need to fill rooms for billing. A clinician in my building condescended to me for 10 minutes a few weeks ago because my colleagues refused a referral from her floor. We have 2 floors with 2 different programs because he was not appropriate for our floor and needed a lot more help than we could give him. Plus, they tried to send him super last minute, same day at 3 p.m., and gave us 0 information on his affect until we did some digging. Basically tried to pull a fast one. I was pissed, and I think my other colleague could tell because she asked if I was okay as soon as we were out of earshot of the clinician. Answer: I work acute inpatient psych, and even then we have patients we can't take or don't have the staffing to safely take. This is not occasional in my facility. The patients will be downplayed by the LCSW or ED, and then we are screwed when they get to us. Or we will decline them for days, and then someone from higher up will decide they want them out of the ED right now and force us to take them. We are impatient. Story 78. Military aircraft fall from the air with such alarming regularity that there's a magazine, monthly or quarterly, can't remember, that documents all aircraft accidents and ranks them by severity. Rotary wing, helicopters, fall the most. We used to call Black Hawks lawn darts for their propensity to fall nose first. Also in that magazine are all the soldiers who accidentally end up being severed by tail rotors. Answer: fun fact. There was a rash of guys walking into tail rotors and dying in the 70s. The brass figured it was because you can't see the tail rotors when spun up, so they painted tips on the blades which cause a pulsing circle at full speed. Hard to miss, right? Turns out, tail rotors with painted tips cause a hypnotic effect that almost lures you closer. After more guys walked into more tail rotors, they gave up painting them and just told everyone, you have to walk like 50 behind a spun-up bird. For my MOS, we just went under the bird to get to the other side. Story 79. Not being honest with your therapist is a great way to receive shoot therapy. If it's hard to be honest, that's a great issue to start with. Story 80. In most cases, training the dog is not a problem. Training the human to change their behavior with the dog can be almost impossible. Training only works if you keep it up. No one can magically transform your dog with no effort from you. Story 81. Strippers don't take a week off work for their period. They just tuck that little string up high and hope it doesn't pop out. Story 82. Most commercial antivirus boils down to, do I know this particular file is malicious? In most cases, this is fine, but it's stupid easy to bypass this by making a non-functional change to the malicious file, which the antivirus is unable to recognize as the same malware as before. It's not until you get to the enterprise-level antivirus that you start to see behavior-based detection. But even then, it's only basic behavior patterns that they can detect. Malware detection relies heavily on the fact that attackers are lazy too. They probably won't spend a lot of time modifying the malware. If you're looking for an antivirus for your personal computer, you can usually stick with what's installed by default, i.e. Windows Security or Max X Protect. Just be sure to run a full scan from time to time. Story 83. Yes, we need a college degree to do this job. Some of us have a 2-year, some of us have a 4-year, but all of us have to pass a national certification and do continuing education to stay certified. I am a radiographer, radiologic technologist, and we do a lot more than just push a button to get your diagnostic or interventional imaging. Story 84. You can literally fix 90 of problems yourself with exercise and diet. You don't need to pay me hundreds of pounds for me to fix you, because the problem will come back if you don't address the root cause. Make the right choices. And yes, they're hard and some suck, but your body will serve you well for decades to come. Story 85. Probably not that much of a secret, but if there weren't cameras, most of you would have been stabbed by a retail worker at least once. Story 86. NHTSA doesn't test to make sure cars meet their safety requirements. They rely on manufacturers self-reporting and competitors tattling on other manufacturers if they don't. They fine companies after the fact, and manufacturers can decide whether a fine per vehicle is easier, cheaper than rolling out a fix with a recall. Story 87. Not in it anymore, but there are a lot of depressed, anxious people in the non-proliferation space. A lot of them are also very, very funny in a very specific, very dark way. I had a professor who would have us howling with laughter about nuclear war plans, things like Project Plowshare, etc. The study of nuclear policy and absurdist humor go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's one of the reasons that Dr. Strangelove works so well. Story 88. Most used goods are in better shape than what you imagine. People have gotten better at taking care of their things and returning it in great conditions. Story 89. Softwares developed in the 90s and 2000s are still being used and are trusted by govs and companies. Story 90. In construction, more hardware and supplies are bought from Home Depot or Harbor Freight than most companies would like to admit. Just because you're paying $2 million for a large project doesn't mean the general contractor won't cut corners where possible. The only way to prevent that from happening is to have an insanely detailed spec book, require submittals for everything, and have someone diligently checking what is in the field and comparing it. Most companies don't have the manpower, patience, or time for that. Story 91. Car aluminum wheels. Bugatti, Porsche, McLaren, Skoda, Renault, VW, BMW have wheels made the same way in the same factory and are sold to the car manufacturer close to the same price. So while a manufacturer like Bugatti pays the wheel factory $60 per wheel, they slap the logo cap and sell a set of 4 wheels for $50K. Also, cheap store brands of food products are made most of the time in the same factory as big brands. But keep in mind that the ingredients are and recipes are actually very different. Cheaper products tend to have lower quality ingredients and more fillers, chemicals, than the brands with higher price points. Story 92. Longer prison terms lead to more crime, not less. Most local cops are actually good people who are helping their communities. The only math lawyers can do is add billable hours. Story 93. I do art restoration for homes that have fires or water damage. The majority of paintings are cleaned using household cleaners, while the worst ones are treated with fire wash. The most expensive part insurance is billed for is storing the work while your house gets fixed. Story 94. Bartenders not only remember your regular drink, we hear pretty much everything you say. We keep so many secrets. Story 95. Some might know this, but when you buy oil, you're paying for the name. If you buy Pennzoil Full Synthetic 5W30 instead of Quaker State Full Synthetic 5W30 because you think it's better quality, you are sadly mistaken. It's the same oil, from the same tank, just different bottles. Story 96. We pump water up into elevated water so that they provide the water pressure in-house. If power goes out and pumps don't run, you still have water pressure. Story 97. Prior work. I wasn't a data broker or anything like that, but give me about an hour and 10, and I could find out phone numbers for a person, their next of kin, their numbers, prior and current employment, sometimes family history, owned property, sometimes blueprints of said property, if they owned any businesses, current status of those businesses like unpaid taxes, etc., voting information, and addresses associated with them. Sometimes vehicle information and such. All perfectly legal, all very surface level, but one just has to know where to go and the order to do things. I worked for a commercial real estate company. Current work. If craftspeople that make everything themselves, not even one that designs things and has them manufactured overseas and is finished here at a mid-size level operation, really paid themselves even remotely fairly, no one would buy anything. Every single artist you see is severely underpricing their work, and while it is likely 300 better than anything you could get otherwise, they're probably getting pennies. And if they point it out, they get dogpiled on. Story 98. IT support here. We don't treat people equally. Nice people are more likely to have their tickets bumped higher up in the queue, especially if they bribe us with donuts in the morning. Annoying people get made to wait longer, unless it's some critical, the whole company is about to lose internet incident. But if you're that guy who angrily calls because he can't figure out how to make a calendar event on Outlook, even after we've sent you multiple how-to links, you better be live, we'll be too busy for you. Story 99. Hot take from a conservationist doing specialized fuel reductions in forests on federal land. Sometimes logging is good for the forest, not ancient old growth obviously, and Smokey Bear is a jerk for leading to wildland firefighters stopping natural, lightning-caused forest fires for the last 60 years. Obviously not the ones that threaten homes. Forests have a natural fire return interval that needs to be met to maintain stasis. Sometimes it's 9 years, sometimes like Hawaii, it's 1,500 years. Without prescribed burns and managed wildfires, where we let it burn but don't let it get crazy, we are damaging the forests more than a small commercialized logging operation would. Story 100. Live person customer service chat sessions. We can see everything you are typing even before you hit send. Story 101. Unless you're getting your car fixed at a dealership, there's a really good chance that the people diagnosing and fixing your car aren't qualified to repair automobiles and are winging it and fudge it up. Story 102. In Canada, there is no off the record, and journalists or the public can record anyone, anywhere, so long as they're part of the conversation. So you can't bug a room, but you can call up a politician and anything they say is on the record. When people say, "Now this is off the record," it just means we probably shouldn't publish it unless we want to burn a bridge. But there are no magic words that make it illegal to publish. Story 103. There are roughly 4 manufacturers that produce all of the HVAC units in the world. The data plate and casing get changed to fit the needs of the individual brands. Story 104. People are hungry on days other than Thanksgiving. If it's about doing good when you are off from work, there are other federal holidays throughout the year when people are hungry and soup kitchens are open. Companies, organizations. As a Black person, thank you for honoring Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King with a day of service. I didn't know the man, but I think he'd be fine if you had days of service and not just on his birthday. Also, an emergency contact should have a name as well as a phone number and be someone other than yourself. Signed, a volunteer coordinator about tenter busy season, even though staff could use help before and after Thanksgiving. Story 105. I'm a data scientist for a large bank building models for anti-money laundering. We have access to absolutely every single thing about you, not just what you gave the bank willingly. We have access to everything about you, legally too. Story 106. There is no vast media conspiracy. We just hold our own newsroom together in the face of cuts and all the same issues every other industry employing humans face. There's no spare bandwidth, let alone organizational ability, for a global conspiracy. Story 107. You don't need to switch off the flick switches on your sockets to save power when nothing is plugged in. Story 108. Not a secret, but something the general public isn't really privy to is that CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is a controversial topic in neuroscience, with a lot of academic politics surrounding it. There is much less scientific evidence for its existence than people know, and there are certain groups associated with its diagnosis and treatment that report their findings to journalists instead of scientific journals. Story 109. If you want an intimacy offender to not reoffend, send them to a rehabilitation-based program, not jail. If you want them to reoffend and learn to not get caught, send them to jail. We've known this for a very long time, but crime is needed to keep a capitalist society running. Violent criminals have similar outcomes too. Extra sad fact, once a kid enters the justice system, they become more likely to end up in a life of crime than a peer who hasn't. Story 110. Chemical engineer Made 32 years on the job in August. Ladies, stop using that foundation stuff on your face. If you knew the horrible chemicals we use to formulate that stuff, you'd never touch it again. Ever. By the way, there's a reason that once you start using it, you can't stop. It's engineered that way because and y'all will not go without it. Story 111. Most of the products sold are actually byproducts of what they say they're selling. Canadian cannabis. Story 112. If you have a business based off mailing via USPS and you move to different USPS locations, expect to have ones who outright steal your packages and cause you to have refunds a lot, so pay attention to that and hold that person accountable like I did. Because if your mail is lost, it's 99% of the time stolen by a courier on the truck, not the people in the office, in my experience. I've only had couriers give me issues. Once I figured this out, I held the person accountable. Plus, I skipped the courier step altogether and went directly to the post office. Still do, and I moved multiple states away last year. This week, I had a newer courier decide to lie. I was not home, and that I had left a note to leave my package at the post office. In reality, he's a very overweight, lazy guy who couldn't be bothered to walk 30 seconds up my driveway and knock on the door to drop it off. Better than stealing like the past, I guess, but I ran my business from probably 10 different post offices in New Jersey and TN now. And New Jersey is where I'm from, but it also varied, especially the richer areas I've lived, to the more poverty-stricken areas. Overall, skip using the courier truck if you mail things, and just go straight to the post office. And wait in line if you want something scanned in instantly. If it's scanned in later at a random time, it's because it was left on the desk, and anything can happen to it at that point. Story 113. 2 things. 1. As a hotel maintenance guy, a lot of people are really dumb and don't know how to work basic things like a phone or TV, or, I kid you not, a toilet at one time. We definitely make fun of you with housekeeping, LOL. Bonus thing, if you don't want maintenance to see your massive intimacy toys, maybe put them away before you call for help. 2. Work at a can plant. There is a certain tolerance for metal that is allowed in a can. Obviously safe for human consumption, but the tolerance is surprisingly high. Story 114. Look, Janice, it's my job to provide you with materials and information. It is not my job to censor or keep an eye on what your kid wants to read. Your kid probably wouldn't even have taken a second glance at that manga that you randomly took off the shelf that is definitely not representative of all manga. Yeah, I know it's not a secret, but it sure feels like no one knows. Story 115. What the average person thinks makes someone a great lawyer is not what actually makes someone a great lawyer. Story 116. People know that we are short of nurses and the NHS is under strain, etc. But do they fully appreciate how short a hospital can actually be of nursing staff? I've worked countless shifts at less than half the template we should have for nurses. Should be 5? You're joking. Running on 3 nurses for a 12-hour shift to 30 patients is not unusual. Even 2 nurses to 30 patients. Sometimes we even get an extra patient just squished into our day room when every bed counts. The levels of stress that we run on is mad. When I say patients, these are acutely ill patients, leaving us to go to ITU unwell, or stepping down to us from ITU levels of dependency. Story 117. Office cleaner. To the person who stuck a handwritten note above the big trash can stating, "This is for recycling only. We put everything in the same trash bag and throw it in a dumpster." Story 118. I'm a 911 dispatcher, just speaking for my area, Southeastern VA, but I think it would shock people to see how understaffed and how far behind technology we are. Your Uber driver has more precise location data than what we are able to get. And if we have to ping your phone, it's nothing like the TV show's movies. It can sometimes take longer than 15 minutes just to give the cell carrier all the necessary forms. And then the triangulation is usually given with an absurd radius. Just to add, we are trying to keep up with technology, and we are getting better, but it's not nearly enough. Story 119. Every product, book, podcast, hotel, and film you see mentioned in an article or list in every magazine and newspaper and TV show has a PR person behind it who worked diligently to get it placed there. Even when it says editor's picks, it wasn't picked, it was placed. Story 120. Despite public perception, the cost of your pet's medical bills is not driven by veterinarian greed. Many make a fraction of what human doctors make. Pharmaceutical companies gauge the vet world just like the human world, sometimes more. The cost of medical equipment and supplies is usually higher because they have to be adapted to animals. The villain is not the person who dedicated their lives to saving animals. They're never in it for the money, and you'd be horrified to see who your money actually goes to. Story 121. On TV, people always look beautiful because the vision engineer smooths skin details in real time, just enough to soften skin texture, hide pores, fine lines and blemishes, and without making the image look blurry. Front lighting erases shadows, creating a flawless, glowing effect. Story 122. Most chemistry labs, except organic chemistry, don't have too many distilling apparatuses standing around. Most likely there is one hidden in a fume hood that hasn't been cleaned in the last 2 decades. The scenery of rows after rows of glassware filled with colorful liquids happily bubbling away is just movie BS, and usually a lab is well lit during working hours. Story 123. Retired database and systems admin person here. Your data is never really private. There are always people on the admin side that can see everything. Has to be for system maintenance and troubleshooting. Fortunately, the great majority of people are honest and decent and are not going to be abusing that ability. But it's there. Story 124. The sale of carbon credits by forest landowners is simply a wealth transfer. It does not produce the intended result of additionality as advertised by the climate and carbon evangelists. Landowners sell carbon and continue business as usual and harvest the same or more timber as before the carbon project. This is true for voluntary carbon credit programs and the CA-ARB compliance offset program. Story 125. Those secure systems, they are built on insecure systems, built on insecure code, patched up from even more insecure code, all the way to the first computer programs. And the only reason they are secure is attackers don't know what shoot code it's built on. It's almost all security through obscurity. It's like having a massive bank vault for a front door, but the walls of your house are paper mache made to look like concrete. The only reason you aren't broken into is nobody knows your walls are fake. Open source generally accepted because it has no obscurity and has to actually rely on security. Hell, I've seen authentication APIs that if you just set one variable in the auth to admin, it doesn't bother questioning you. But you have to know the variable and how the variable is used to know that. Security is all theater. Story 126. That urgent project your boss is freaking out about, we're just going to stare at it for 3 days, have one panic meeting where we decide to circle back, and then do 80 of the work the night before it's due. Every single time. Story 127. Most financial advisors don't know much about finance. They follow carefully crafted scripts, sell you packaged off-the-shelf financial products, and have back-office teams that prep manage everything. They are usually just salespeople. Story 128. Veterinary medicine. Yes, your dog that can't be confined, can't be left alone, just doesn't do well away from me, walks right into a kennel or run, and is well adjusted the whole day he or she is at the vet. Sometimes there are some that are anxious and bark or hang to the back, but they don't have the mental breakdown the client swears they will if they have to drop their pet off for services or a procedure. Story 129. News stations have pre-recorded obituaries of famous people ready to go in case they pass, same as newspapers. Just some space to record a VO with their age. Story 130. High-tech services consultants are mostly guessing their way through the problem on your hourly dime. Story 131. The chemicals you see on the labels of your food sound scary, but they immensely improve the quality of the product in most cases. Emulsifiers, natural preservatives, etc. can all really help texture and prevent mold and separation. They use as little as they can get away with, and in most cases, it's like milligrams per serving. People are more afraid of polysorbate 80 than they are of booze, and adult beverage is a known toxin. Story 132. I work for a water district in the meters department. No, the meter is not wrong. Yes, it's accurate. It did not overcharge your usage. Also, no, the water district is not lying to you about the water quality. Most of the people who service the system also live in the community. We are your neighbors who drink and use the water just like you. Story 133. The best way to get people to admit to things is to provide a good rationalization for them. Give them a safe context to admit it that doesn't paint them as a bad person. And usually they will admit it. Thing is, we are only after the admission, and the rationalization won't matter in court. Story 134. Web developer, among other things, here, who has cleaned up many a horrifying mess. The general level of basic technical competence among web developers is appalling and is entirely unrelated to their skill at selling, their pricing, or the promises made by their sales team or on their website. Story 135. If you are looking for advice about when to apply for retirement benefits, call a financial advisor, not SSA. If you are already drawing, ran into a problem, and want advice about how to best recover from it, go into the office, be super nice, and be open to what they tell you. You're not the first person to have this problem, and they're feeling it too. Story 136. Most companies and public functions run their IT as shoddily and cheaply as possible. Even the ones you'd think have their act together often don't. The ones that do are the exception, not the norm. Story 137. Medical devices. Think any type of implant, orthopedic, dental, whatever, costs $7 to $12 to make. We charge the physician $400 to $1,500 depending on the device. The patient is charged $2,500 to $20K, again depending on the device. Story 138. IT since 20 years, I basically Google most things. Apparently, I'm very good at finding some obscure forums and websites where the exact same problem already got solved. Learn to search for the right keywords and you're above average in IT. Story 139. If you report a crime and you're told that it won't be investigated, it doesn't mean it's filed away. It's logged and can be used as intel for other crimes. While it may not seem important, a string of TFMV that you're just reporting to get an insurance number can build up to a bigger picture and help preventive techniques and can help with investigations. Story 140. A lot of the treatments you are paying for are watered down. Hydrofacial, for example, 99.9 water solution. Tap water, that's some high-priced H2O, y'all. Story 141. Your children tell their preschool teachers things you would be mortified about. We only believe half of them because we know that 3-year-olds aren't the most reliable of narrators. Story 142. A very high percentage of the rich, the crazy, who run businesses behave very much like Trump. Private, not public companies. Many sycophants who are dazzled by the BS. Lots of nepotism because they can be manipulated. Lots of proclivities. Don't pay bills like little people. Not much business integrity. There's always a bit of fraud somewhere. Strong PR marketing to create and maintain an illusion of cachet greatness, which most believe. No sense of humor at their expense. Always unfaithful to SO. Story 143. AI is actually really bad at writing code and text. It's an approximation chance-driven thing. If more people type an error on a particular line, AI will type that same error. It's also very obvious when you've used AI to write code for you. You aren't fooling anyone. I've been a first-year university-level programming teacher for 3 years. Programming jobs are much safer than people expect you to believe because it's extremely difficult to replace someone who actually studied and didn't cheat during their bachelor's study. The courses teach you new ways to think that are extremely difficult to learn through short courses, corner cutting, and on-the-job experience. The thing that is actually causing risk in the programming career field is all the people who clearly haven't taken the time to learn how to do it properly that are given the power to have say on what should and shouldn't be allocated resources. Story 144. AI and automation is coming for your jobs. High-level folks actively talk about how many FTEs they will replace like it's a game of chess. Story 145. Wine is not vegan or vegetarian. There are a number of animals that are crushed and fermented along with the grapes. Most of these are insects, but mice, frogs, and bats are also commonly caught up in the grape harvest as well. This is true of hand-harvested grapes as well as mechanically harvested grapes. Answer. An unrelated question popped up in my head after reading this. Do vegetarians abstain from figs? Those theoretically contain dead wasps, digested by the fig, but still, after all. Which obviously leads to the question of the definition of vegetarian-vegan. A relatively straightforward one is you don't eat animals that were eliminated to feed you. Beef, pork, fish, poultry. Then there's not consuming byproducts of eliminate. Leather and fur are obvious, gelatin less so, etc. Another extension is not consuming products of direct animal exploitation. Factory-produced cheese, butter, eggs. So far it's clear. Then comes the indirect consumption. Here I see a gray area into which pretty much anything can fall. Bugs in your wine weren't exploited, they just happened to be there. Aren't there any bugs on wheat stalks when they're harvested and processed? Obviously, we'll have to rule that pollination is not exploitation, or we'll all starve. Or not. Figs. This train of thought started with figs. Story 146. The amount of work it takes to keep a military fighter jet working. Before I went into the service, I thought it was all pretty uniforms and shiny jets. There's a lot of work, or at least there was when I was in years ago, out in the cold and rain, and then uncomfortable positions for hours on end sometimes. I think the average fighter jet takes about, let's say, 8 or 9 man-hours per flight hour. Story 147. I work in wholesale funding for a bank. My job is to secure the lending a bank needs to lend out. You'd think it's super technical, but I usually just call up people and ask how much and at what rate. Story 148. The amount of grown adults who cannot read and those who can read but do not comprehend what they have read. These are people that graduated from high school. They cannot read. I don't know how they graduated. I can only figure each teacher just pushed them off to the next level. They are not special education either. They tend to be intelligent. They just weren't taught. It's sad. Story 149. That most environmental conservation projects funded by the UN are a total scam. Pretty much all large donor-funded international development initiatives in Africa are rife with corruption and do very little to benefit the countries they target. Story 150. Security guard work is mostly customer service. Some go way too far, and we are not trained to manhandle people. Story 151. When a machine drops 19.5 liters of oil, it's usually a lot more than 19.5 liters of oil. Sometimes we go through a tank of oil just locating a leak. Underground heavy mobile plant maintenance. Edit. Sandvik Cat Normet. If it's leaking, it's got oil in it. Story 152. You can negotiate a medical bill or set up a payment plan for a super low monthly payment, like 10, so they don't keep bugging you. Story 153. IT secret. Cloud is just rented servers in dusty data centers. Apply for every scholarship. Sole applicant often wins. Industry's open book if you know where to look. Story 154. I am a front-end developer, and a lot of websites uses some tools to construct session replays based on JavaScript events. In layman's terms, basically everything you on a website is like screen recorded that can be seen, observed by someone. It's basically used to spot bugs in the website, but yeah, all actions are recorded. Story 155. When your IT guy is furiously typing on that scary black screen with green text, 9 times out of 10, we're just on our other monitor Googling your exact error message word for word. That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vancher. See you soon.